This animal managed to stump scientists for years over the most ridiculous thing in the world. It's little poops. And when I tell you why, you're not going to believe it. Every single night, somewhere in Australia, an animal is quietly producing something that physics says should be almost impossible. Not rounded pellets with slightly squared edges, perfect cubes. Flat faces, sharp corners, clean angles, each one about 2 centimeters to a side, made out of soft, wet material, formed without a mold, without a press, without anything that should be capable of stamping a geometric shape into something that's squishy. No other animal on the entire planet does this, not one. And here's the part that should genuinely stop you. For decades, science had no real idea how it happened. The world knew the fact. You have probably seen the photographs, the memes, the headlines. But the actual mechanism, the answer to the simple question of how a soft tube of intestine produces hard-edged cubes, was not properly explained until the year 2021. This is the story of that answer, and it turns out to be only the beginning of why the animal behind it is the single most underestimated creature in Australia. Let's meet it, because almost everything you assume about this animal is wrong. The wombat is a marsupial, a stocky, barrel-shaped, nocturnal herbivore that lives across eastern Australia and Tasmania, weighs somewhere between 25 and 40 kilograms, and measures around a meter long. It looks, in every photograph you have ever seen, like a slow, gentle, slightly grumpy living teddy bear, the kind of animal you would describe as cuddly without a second thought. And that impression is almost completely false, because a wombat, when it decides to move, can hit around 40 kilometers an hour in a short burst. Sit with that number for a second. That is faster, over a short sprint, than Usain Bolt at full tilt. If a wombat genuinely wanted to run you down across open ground, it would catch you, and there would be very little you could do about it. The slowness people picture is just a wombat conserving energy. The speed is always there, held in reserve, waiting for the moment it is needed. This is the first crack in the image, and it sets the tone for everything that follows, because the wombat is an animal whose entire reputation is built on a misunderstanding. Slow in appearance, fast in reality, soft on the outside, as we are about to see, armored underneath, and equipped with a digestive system so strange that human engineers are now studying it to solve problems our own industry cannot. But all of that starts with the cubes, so let's go back to them, because the scale of it is stranger than the fact alone. A single wombat does not produce 1 or 2 cubes. An adult can deposit as many as 100 of them in a single night, neat little dice stacked and scattered across its territory, and it often places them in tidy piles on raised surfaces, as though arranging them on display. And for most of the time humans have studied wombats, the obvious question of how was met with a series of confident, reasonable, and completely wrong answers. One idea was that the shape came from the anus itself, that the opening was somehow square and extruded the material like a die press. It is not, and it does not. Another idea was that the wombat shaped the cubes after the fact, pressing them against rocks or packing them into shape. It does not do that either. A third theory blamed the diet, the dry grasses and roots, as if the food itself crystallized into blocks. Wrong again. Every intuitive explanation failed, and the reason they failed is that they were all looking in the wrong place. The cube is not shaped on the way out, and it is not shaped after it lands. The cube is built inside the animal, deep in the gut, long before it ever sees daylight. And proving that took a scientist willing to do something most people would rather not. Her name is Patricia Yang, and she is a researcher who at Georgia Tech had already built a career studying the unglamorous physics of how animals move fluids and solids through their bodies. To crack the wombat, she and her colleagues did the unavoidable. They obtained the intestines of wombats that had died on Australian roads, donated through wildlife and roadkill services, and they examined exactly what the digestive tract was doing in its final stretch. When she first presented the findings in 2018, at a meeting of the American Physical Society, the result was so unusual and so delightfully strange that the work went on to win an Ig Nobel Prize in 2019, an award given for research that first makes you laugh and then makes you think. It is the perfect description of this particular puzzle, because the giggle at the premise gives way, almost immediately, to a real and serious question about physics and anatomy that nobody had ever properly answered. And the thinking part is where it gets genuinely impressive, because in 2021, Yang and her team published the full mechanism, and it is a piece of structural engineering hiding inside an animal nobody takes seriously. Here is what is actually happening. The wombat has one of the longest and slowest digestive systems of any marsupial, a tract that can take up to 2 weeks to process a single meal, wringing it out so thoroughly that by the end the waste has been dried to roughly a quarter water. compared to the 3/4 water in human waste. That extreme dehydration is the first ingredient, because it turns the fecal mass from something fluid into something stiff, dense, and moldable, like clay rather than mud. But the dryness alone does not make corners. The corners come from the wall of the intestine itself. In that final stretch of the gut, the muscular wall is not uniform. It has alternating regions of different stiffness running around its circumference. Two stiffer, more rigid zones and two softer, more elastic ones. As the dried mass is squeezed along by the rhythmic contractions of the intestine, those contractions press unevenly. The elastic regions give and contract faster, pinching inward to form the edges and corners, while the stiff regions resist and stay flat, shaping the level faces. Over many cycles in the last portion of the intestine, that uneven squeezing slowly presses a soft cylinder into a sharp-cornered cube, the way you might shape clay by pressing it repeatedly against a patterned surface. What makes it so remarkable is that there is no hard template anywhere in the process. No square opening, no rigid mold, no cutting tool. There is only a soft tube with a varying stiffness around its walls, contracting in a rhythm. And out of that rhythm, a precise geometric solid emerges over and over 100 times a night. It is not the anus, it is not the rocks, it is not the diet. It is a soft tube with hard and soft stripes contracting over and over, printing a geometric form into matter from the inside out. And as far as we know, it is the only place in the entire animal kingdom where anything like it occurs. Which leaves the most interesting question of all, the one that turns a piece of plumbing into a piece of evolution. Why? Why would an animal go to the trouble of manufacturing cubes when every other mammal on Earth is perfectly content with pellets? The leading explanation is about communication. Wombats are territorial, solitary, nocturnal animals, and like many such animals, they mark their territory with their droppings, leaving them deliberately in prominent places, on top of rocks, on fallen logs, at the entrances to their burrows, as a kind of scented signpost that says this ground is taken. For a solitary, short-sighted animal that meets few others of its kind, these chemical messages are a primary way of communicating across the dark, advertising identity, status, and the edges of a home range without ever having to confront a rival face-to-face. And here is where the cube earns its keep. Much of the Australian landscape is uneven, sloped, broken ground. A round dropping left on a rock or a slope would do the obvious thing. It would roll off, tumble away, and scatter the message into meaninglessness. A cube does not roll. A cube stays exactly where it is placed, stacked and stable, holding its position on the most prominent perch the wombat can find, keeping the territorial signal intact. It is an elegant idea, and it is the most widely favored explanation. But in this matters for honesty, it is not settled. Some researchers argue the shape may simply be a byproduct of that long, dry, peculiar gut, an accident of plumbing rather than a design signal. The debate is genuinely open, and that is not a weakness in the story. It is the most honest place a science video can end a question, with the best current answer, and an acknowledgement that the final word is not yet written. Now here is the turn that should make even people who do not care about animals sit up, because the wombat's gut has stopped being a curiosity and started being a blueprint. The ability to form a soft material into precise cubic shapes, using nothing but uneven pressure and no rigid mold at all, is something human manufacturing is genuinely bad at. We make square things by forcing material into molds or cutting it down, processes that are wasteful and energy-hungry. A system that coaxes geometry out of soft matter through pattern squeezing alone is exactly the kind of trick industry would love to copy. Researchers have pointed to potential applications that read like science fiction, or efficient ways to manufacture cubic and shaped objects without molds, new approaches to drug delivery where the geometry of a dose can be controlled inside a soft system, and lessons for soft robotics, the field trying to build machines out of flexible materials. The underlying principle, that you can produce a precise shape not by forcing material into a rigid form, but by varying the softness of the walls that squeeze it, is genuinely new to human engineering. And it arrived not from a laboratory but from the back end of a marsupial. An animal most people associate with nothing more than being a roadside hazard may hold a manufacturing principle our engineers are still trying to reverse engineer. The wombat solved, by accident or by evolution, a problem we have not fully cracked with all our factories. And the cubes, remarkable as they are only one item on a long list of reasons this animal is not what it appears. Take the way it defends itself, which is genuinely brutal. A wombat's backside is armored. The rear of its body is reinforced with a tough, thickened plate of cartilage and bone over the pelvis, and the wombat uses it as a deliberate weapon. When a predator, a wild dog or a fox, chases a wombat toward its burrow, the wombat dives in headfirst and plugs the entrance with that armored rump, sealing the tunnel like a living cork. And if the predator is foolish enough to push its head in over the top to bite, the wombat braces and drives upward, slamming the attacker's skull against the hard roof of the burrow with enough force to crush it. Foxes and wild dogs have been killed exactly this way, lured into following a wombat underground only to be pinned and crushed by the very animal they thought they were hunting. This is not a passive prey animal hiding. It is an animal that has turned its own body into a trap, and it kills predators with it. Those burrows, by the way, are engineering feats in their own right. Tunnel systems that can run 30 meters for the common wombat and far longer for its relatives, with multiple chambers, some of them used and extended across generations for centuries. The southern hairy-nosed wombat builds the most elaborate of all, sprawling warrens whose interconnected tunnels can total close to 90 meters, vast underground apartment blocks dug entirely with claws and muscle, and kept cool and stable while the surface bakes above. And powering all of this is one of the slowest metabolisms of any mammal, a system so economical that, as we saw, it can take up to 2 weeks to fully digest a meal, wringing every last drop of nutrition and water out of poor, dry vegetation that would barely sustain most other grazers. The wombat is in effect a low-energy walking fermentation tank, armored at the back, faster than a sprinter, and quietly conducting structural engineering in its gut. The teddy bear was never a teddy bear. There is even a kernel of truth behind one of the more emotional wombat stories that spread during Australia's catastrophic bushfires in 2019 and 2020. Social media filled with claims that wombats were heroically herding other animals into their burrows to shelter them from the flames. And it is worth being clear and honest here, because the line between the real and the exaggerated matters. There is no evidence that wombats deliberately led or rescued other animals. That part is a myth. But the simpler, verifiable truth underneath it is almost as striking. Wombat burrows are deep, cool, and stable, and during the fires they genuinely did serve as refuges, with other species sheltering inside them and surviving because of the structures a wombat had dug for itself. Reptiles, small mammals, and insects rode out the heat in the cool depths of tunnels their builder never intended to share. The wombat did not play hero. It simply built something so well that other animals' lives depended on it, which is, in its own way, the whole point of this animal. So here's what the cube really tells you. The wombat is an imposter, an animal we've labeled as cute, slow, and harmless, when in reality it is the exact opposite in almost every way. It is fast where we think it is slow, armored where we think it is soft, dangerous where we imagine it to be gentle. It is our own arrogance that has led us to underestimate this creature, and hidden within the unglamorous machinery of its digestive system lies a feat of natural engineering that our own laboratories are still struggling to understand. Slow in image and fast in truth, soft in picture and armored in body, comical in reputation and lethal to anything foolish enough to corner it underground. The next time you see a wombat in a photograph, looking sleepy and round and faintly ridiculous, remember that you may be looking at the least understood piece of biological engineering in the animal world. And there is one more reason to look closely while you still can. The common wombat is doing fine, but it has a cousin, the northern hairy-nosed wombat, that is among the rarest mammals on Earth, reduced by recent counts to only around a few hundred individuals, clinging on in essentially a single protected pocket of Queensland. One of the rarest large mammals anywhere on the planet, an entire species that could fit inside a single small town. The same science that unraveled the secret of the common wombat's gut is part of how we understand and try to save the handful of its relatives that are left. And if a living wombat seems improbable, a fast, armored cube-printing fortress of an animal, then it is worth knowing that this lineage once produced something far harder to believe. Not so long ago, in geological terms, the wombat's family tree included a relative that was not the size of a dog, but the size of a car, a peaceful, migrating giant weighing close to 3 tons that once crossed this same continent in herds, carrying its young in a pouch and stamping the very same lineage across the outback at a scale that beggars belief. It was the largest marsupial that ever lived, and its story is where this one truly begins.